Episode 6 showed why the future has to be visible. But even the clearest vision stalls if people do not feel safe enough to learn, experiment, ask questions, and admit what they do not know.
So let's talk about AI and people. So the headlines at the moment, when we kind of read about AI, it's companies using it for surveillance, measuring keystrokes, laying people off, roles disappearing. There's a lot of scary stuff out there. What's the emotional reality of that like within organizations? How does that shape the way you think about the workforce?
It is true. I mean, I wake up every day listening to the news and I hear sort of doom and gloom all over the world. And then when you apply that to the place where you should feel safe or you should feel trusted to be an expert in what you're doing, I mean, those are scary things. And so I can't generally speak to how all organizations are thinking about it, but I think from a practicality standpoint, if you're wanting to sort of have a surveillance and a monitoring system, are you just doing it for compliance? And what's the goal? What's the purpose? And so for the organization and what I believe that we're doing that's a little bit differently is really taking this moment to say, we have to stay curious. You have to sort of adopt an even faster learning mindset. It's almost like the playbook hasn't even been fully written and you don't even know what page you're going to turn to. Being able to allow for people to almost experiment with safeguards, helping them understand that the work is not meant to necessarily be to replace what they're doing, but how do you use AI to not only take away sort of that low value add, they talk about administrative responsibilities or creating more efficiency, but actually, how do you use AI to be more sort of people-centric because now you're focusing on those sort of scarce skills, judgment, complexity, conversations with people, helping them understand sort of the moment. And I think helping people kind of come along on the journey is probably the most important aspect that we can take rather than having something happening to them.
How do you give them that psychological safety to do that? Because there's some really interesting sort of data out there about people using AI, at home in their kind of personal life, and then not using it at work because they're afraid to, or their company won't let them. I mean, how do you make people feel safe?
So SmartRecruiters, a couple of years ago, we actually went and we did a lot of discovery around sort of our first organizational introduction into AI. And we, the IT team and the InfoSec team, they really kind of surfaced something that they thought would be beneficial to all roles. So role agnostic across the organization. And that tool is Glean. It actually sits on top of ChatGPT, but what it does is it allows for you to aggregate data sources from all over the organization that every unique person has access to. So in my role in HR, obviously lots of sensitive, confidential access and information. I don't want that to be kind of pulled into a search or used in a prompt. And so we did a little bit of an organizational-wide experiment by creating a corporate goal around it. What would happen if we created a bit more efficiency? And what we started to see is all of these interesting use cases and ambassadors that kind of surfaced across the business that said, well, let's try and apply it in a different way. And how do we then collaborate a little bit faster? How do we get to the information, or how do we kind of solve complex problems in a different way? And that itself, I think, started from top down. And that, I think, started the infrastructure of psychological safety and allowing for people to then want to carry that forward.
Once people have safe access, the next question changes. It is no longer simply whether they can use AI. It becomes where AI can remove friction, unlock capacity, and help people redesign the work itself.
And so now, speaking from sort of the people or the HR team that I lead, we're using that same sort of concept to say, if you could rewrite your job, what would be the work that you find either uninteresting or cumbersome or frustrating because there's bottlenecks or you're waiting on something else? And we're starting to kind of crowdsource and do some experiments of our own. And so being able to kind of carve out blocks to be able to do some of that more creative thinking. And so right now I've got a leader on my team that's actually going to reserve a full 8-hour day over the next few weeks. We've kind of come up with a couple hypotheses of things that she could do. So for instance, we're looking at moving into SAP through our acquisition. And they have a very different way that they look at sort of compensation, job architecture, title, levels, what have you. So rather than having to go and look up all of these independent pieces of information as we think about bridging from one world to the next, what if we could create agents that could go and do that for us? So again, there's consistency, there's scale, there's reliability. And what would that then do? What capacity does that give us back to do something different and unique around the business? So we're testing it. We're going to see the effectiveness. We're going to see if we've got the right tools. And then we're going to actually go and start not only crowdsourcing around HR, but around the business and see how we can apply some impact elsewhere.
And you said that comes down from a leadership level. What does that look like practically? Are you assessing the leaders in how they're using AI and how they're thinking about things?
We can't actually expect any sort of excitement or desire to change and to lean into the moment if we're not sort of practicing that and embodying those qualities. But we actually spent 50% of our time, so one full day where we just did AI design, like a masterclass.
Cool.
We actually applied a lot of these principles to ourselves. Right now, we're taking a lot of the things that we did at that session, and we're going to carry it forward in terms of some initiatives that we're going to see across the entire business.
Psychological safety also requires entry points. People cannot become AI fluent by being told to catch up. They need ways to practice without shame, without pretending, and without being forced into a leap they are not ready to make.
There's a huge piece here around AI fluency. And I think sometimes in tech, we are in a bit of a bubble where maybe we assume everyone knows, how to use this, or like we tend to be power users. And the reality is a lot of people aren't ready for that, or maybe they are ready, but it's intimidating, or it feels risky, or maybe they feel like they don't have time to learn it yet. So how do you make sure you're staying ahead while still giving, good entry points for folks who do want to learn and start upskilling as well? And I think with the pace things are moving now, you can't really afford to wait either, because it will just, you will fall behind from a learning and skills perspective. We're questioning our ways of working and seeing, is there a better way to do this?
Safety does not mean slowing down until nothing changes. It means giving people enough clarity to know where AI helps, where it should not decide, and where human judgment has to stay in the loop.
But the other one's just around AI. We talk about not wanting to create bias, and it's not meant to be the decision maker. It's meant to influence or to help you succinctly get to, like, what is a root cause, or what are some potential solutions, and then let's have a conversation in terms of how we're going to execute against it. So softer skills around, again, the complexity of work, the decisions that need to happen, the judgment piece, the human elements, I think, which is why I don't envision AI completely replacing our jobs, right? Because we need all of those across the world. And I think it's something that you actually have to see, not only the curiosity, so we're talking about just screening for talent or making sure that they're the right sort of fit for your organization, building in sort of that as sort of a litmus test, right? And curiosity, the fluency, the desire to go and take on some new skills and to apply something in a new way.
The point is not to pretend fear disappears. The point is to create enough trust that people can name it, understand the purpose, and become part of the solution.
Good leadership. I think we talked a little bit about this earlier in terms of a lot of those sort of like the fundamentals that are really important. So psychological safety, naming the fear, helping somebody understand how they can be a part of the solution and addressing the fear. Good leaders have to lead by example. So it's not the do as I say, not as I do. I think the leaders also have to understand exactly what they're striving for. So I think starting with the outcomes in mind versus this is the expectation, and also just challenging. So if there is, this sort of desire to look at AI as only efficiency or only for compliance and surveillance, challenge. Why? And what is the reason for that?
AI-literate cultures do not happen because people are told to be brave. They happen when leaders make time for learning, practice candor, project calm, and show people they are on the journey too.
I think good leadership is all about setting the right priorities, making sure that you're really focused on the most impactful activities that relate to business success. Being humane, you're having the interests of your people at heart. In the world of AI, I think what changes is it's critically important that everybody is using AI, is familiar with the tools, is AI competent and AI literate. So it's important as leaders to be on top of that. And that means taking time, clearing time for your people to be able to learn new skills and capabilities.
I would say probably leading with curiosity. So not taking what you know for granted or your ways of operating or working, like having a very open mindset of how things can change, what it could look like, and also encouraging curiosity with your teams. Encourage folks to challenge and try new things. And I would much rather have folks experiment a lot and then maybe need to pull them back in terms of implementing or getting it structured, rather than them feeling like they can't go out and explore and are, hesitant from the start. So I would say balancing those two. So being curious and open to what it can do, but still like keeping that anchor of, human experience and human emotion and empathy and all of this.
Being comfortable with rapid change is critical. I think that as leaders, you acknowledge that. You also are mindful to project calm, even though you may be going a million miles an hour in your head, thinking through things. I think that's important.
Yeah.
But I also think it's also important to practice candor and realism with your employees. They're on the journey with you, and we need each other to make all this work.
Psychological safety is not the soft part of AI adoption. It is the operating layer that lets people tell the truth, test new ways of working, protect what should be protected, and keep human judgment where it belongs. Without safety, AI use goes quiet, fear goes unnamed, and learning becomes a private act. With safety, people can experiment with safeguards, challenge bad use cases, build fluency, and help shape the future instead of waiting for it to happen to them. But trust inside the organization is only one part of the test. The next question is whether the business can prove where AI creates value, what deserves investment, and how to scale without pretending the math is simple.